Real Podcast, because wrestling needs us. Brought to you by kingofamazon.com. Go to kingofamazon.com when you do your shopping for Amazon to help the King of Podcasts. Shop for Amazon at kingofamazon.com.
Welcome to episode 533 of the Wrestling is Real Podcast. KOP, we're here with you through the courtesy of wrestlingisreal.com. If you didn't know yet, the website is now set. I've done quite a few changes. I don't have a WordPress site now. I decided to go against that because, you know, it is, some of you might actually go to the site to go ahead and find the show, but initially you'll go there. But then after that, you know, it really, you're going to find the show where you're going to find it. When you can find the show, any major podcast portal, okay? Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Radio Public. I mean, there's so many out there. You just got to go and look for it. It's out there. I've looked. I can't believe how many places are looking for it. And for those of you that are checking the show for the first time because you are on Apple Podcasts, and those of you around the world that are checking the show out, welcome. Thank you for finding the show. Hopefully you'll see that I'm trying to be a different take on how most wrestling podcasters are when it comes to professional wrestling and how they feel about the business, because I know many out there have a particular opinion that they are very WWE centric. Now, I know that most of this audience will check me out because I, much like everybody else, people want to hear about what's going on with WWE. But then my focus also goes to the other TV promotions around North America. So that includes All Elite Wrestling. That includes Major League Wrestling, NWA, Impact Wrestling, and like I said, AEW. So that's where my focus is at as well. So I keep an eye on all of that, but obviously you just kind of work with where we are with things. At the moment, we just finished Money in the Bank and the fall off from that, which is a very different fall off than I would expect. Then you have Double or Nothing coming up in 10 days or 9 days as I record the show. And there's much more to talk about. Obviously, the upcoming bundle of joy for one Becky Lynch, who made the announcement Monday. We're going to talk all about that because another opening of the main event of the roster opens up. We're going to have to talk about that because there's a big gaping hole right now on both sides of the main event. And we got to talk about some of the things that WWE's trying to do to kind of help quell that, plus the ratings issues that they're continuing to have, because they're not in a good way at all when it comes to all of that. So that's another thing they're going to have to be dealing with. First of all, you heard at the top of the show, kingofamazon.com. So that is my special Amazon link. When you go there, it is the best way for me to go ahead and get help to the show, or else you can go through Cash App. Send me a Cash App donation if you like. If it can be $1, 50 cents, whatever you want it to be, if you'd like, at King of All Podcasts. And then the PayPal is paypal.me/King of Podcasts. So either which way, if you'd like to go and help out that way, I'd really appreciate it. And like I said, now I have wrestlingisreal.com. So when you go to the website now, it will take you to, you know, the last 10 episodes of the program and a link to more episodes, which will take you to my Spreaker page where all my shows are hosted. And then from there, you'll see all the different links and everything that are going on right there. But if you're just getting yourself acclimated to the show, you can go there. And then you'll have ways to go and subscribe to the show. Just look down at the bottom of the page. You'll see all the links to where to subscribe and how to follow me. It's all down there at the bottom. And also news from Fightful.com. I put that up there, a little news feed for everybody to go ahead and enjoy. Something simple, because I figured everybody else is going to go ahead and, you know, do what they're going to do. And that's fine. I was like, okay, let's just put this all together and make it all happen. So that's what I wanted to do for all of you out there. WrestlingIsReal.com. The site is now live and up to go. And you can find all that you need right there, all on one page. You don't have to go to the multiple pages, nothing like that. You just go ahead and click where you need to click. It's all in one shot. WrestlingIsReal.com. All right, so the news has happened, and we have already talked about it pretty, we know about it. We're all aware about it, and I'm sure certain people have already talked about this news happening this week. But yes, Becky Lynch has relinquished the Raw Women's title, and I forget how many days she held on to the belt, but she dropped it, and basically the Money in the Bank ladder match for the women, the one that Asuka won Sunday night, she in fact, doesn't even have to cash in the briefcase. She is been awarded the title. She gets it. So that match ended up being a title match, which is great. Okay. And there you go. And the ratings went really well for Raw because of the fact that it did happen. I mean, it's not great, but people were actually interested in seeing Becky Lynch's major announcement, wondering what it was going to be, plus seeing Randy Orton and Edge setting up for another match coming up at Backlash. So there you go. So the gist of the story from Fightful: an emotional Lynch opened up Monday's Raw in a bittersweet moment, announcing she would be going away for a bit. Blah, blah, blah. Said she's going to become a mother. And she left the Raw Women's Championship inside the briefcase as they opened up the Money in the Bank briefcase. And Asuka looked like she was genuinely surprised and very thankful. And I almost feel like she turned face right there just right away. But there you go. And Becky Lynch finishes up and says, "You go and be a warrior because I'm going to go be a mother." Nice way to put it. Now, as we know, Becky Lynch is engaged to Seth Rollins, and they announced her engagement in August 2019. She said this to People magazine, quote, "I've always wanted kids. I'm just so career focused that it became one of those things that when you're chasing a dream for so long, I always wondered, am I going to get around to it? Is it going to happen for me? Now you just have this whole other person you have to look after and grow and make sure you're doing everything you possibly can to make sure that they are the healthiest and safest they can be. But we're just so excited. Just so excited for how much we're going to give that little thing." She went through a couple of pregnancy tests in April, but the first one came negative. Lynch saying she took it wrong. A digital test done through her doctor confirmed the good news. She's expecting in December. Now she also says this, quote, "I don't know what the next chapter is because I only know what it's like to think for myself when I'm by myself. So I don't know what it'll look like and how my priorities shift and what I'm going to want in the future. So everything's open." Well, let's talk about what everything's open means. So she entered the Performance Center 2013. That's when we first saw her on NXT. So she's been on our TV screens in some way, shape, or form for 7 years. Well, put it like this. I mean, when you think about everything that's happened with Becky Lynch to this point in her career with overall, I mean, she's had a long career period of what she's been doing. She was training as far back as 2002. So really 18 years she's been in the business. And she did have a severe head injury which took her away for a while. But again, she off and on for 18 years, she was involved in wrestling. So at 15 years old? She's had a long career. She's 33 years old. She just turned 33. At this point, it's now as good a time as any. If she wants to have children, now she has somebody that can share that with. Obviously, her and Seth, they're going to get married. They're going to have kids. So good on her. And I think that's what we're going to have. Now, I don't know if the wedding's going to happen before. But I mean, I guess they should have the wedding coming up. But for Becca to go ahead and drop out and to go ahead and, look forward to being a mom, I wish her all the best. That's a great thing for her. But I will say that I think she's not going to go and come back after the fact. Because I think what's going to happen is, when that happens, I think things just change for her. I don't think she comes back full time. She doesn't have to. She's accomplished everything. She made it to the top of her of wrestling. I mean, regardless of how we've kind of, I always had the opinion that I didn't like how they were booking her. It wasn't that I didn't like her. It wasn't that I didn't support her and I thought she was a great wrestler. She is. She's really great. I love who she was in the ring. I really enjoyed her work with Charlotte. I thought those two knocked it out of the park. All the time you saw them together, I thought her with Asuka, she had great matches. Put it like that as well. She had great matches. I even thought that the feud with Ronda Rousey was quite impressive. Her win as champion, I didn't care for the man character so much, but that's because the company screwed up on that. So it wasn't so much her. But everything just kind of worked out like it did. And it was kind of just, we were all waiting to see if she was going to really get herself up to a certain spot. 2018, she gets more aggressive, and then you really feel the push. And at SummerSlam attacking Charlotte Flair, makes herself an unfairly treated underdog, and then she goes up 2019 Royal Rumble, and she wins the Women's Royal Rumble match to go ahead and go after that match, and then WrestleMania 35, she won both the Raw and SmackDown Women's title, so double champion. She dropped the SmackDown title following month, but then Raw Women's champion 399 days. And there you go. Listen, there's nothing else for her to prove. I don't know what they were going to do with her after the fact. I mean, obviously, now we see why the Shayna Baszler program kind of went quickly like it did, because of the fact that she was only going to have so much time left in order for her to wrestle, because, she can't be continuing it with the kind of schedule she has now if she's pregnant. So she gets to move along. Maternity leave starts now, and she's ready to go. So now we see where things go for her, and, Christmas baby could very well be. Must be pretty nice. During the holidays, that'll be pretty nice for her to go and have, and, I like to see where Seth Rollins, given the background he had because of, some of his relations in the past. Obviously, Becky Lynch has made him a solid man. He made a man out of him. And obviously, these two are made for each other, so they're very happy together. You can see it. I mean, it just looks right. So at her age, she's still a very young woman. But in terms of having kids, yeah, early 30s, biological clock is ticking. But this is as good a time as any for her to go ahead and be a mother. To step away now, I mean, also, for the fact of what the company did, they got a lot out of her. I think they for what it was worth, she's a success story in WWE. She's going to be that. I mean, she will have made it to the pinnacle. She made it to the main event. She's considered a main eventer. And I still think there's a whole lot set for her anyway. I think one of the things that'll happen after this is I really feel like a couple weeks ago I made my point that she goes into acting after this. What we saw on her on Billions really makes a big difference. Now, stepping away because of this, well, put it like this. There's not much going on in Hollywood right now when it comes to production. I mean, now we're seeing what happened with Los Angeles County. And the news over there that the mayor there of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti, is already talking about that most businesses are going to be kept closed until September. Some things being open, but basically stay at home will stay in place until September at the earliest. 3 more months, which sucks. But that's what they're looking at. I don't know what that means for Hollywood and what that's going to happen to her going forward, but it's an unfortunate thing, and there's nothing else that can happen. We just have to wait and find out where things are going to go if Hollywood gets back into production. I'll talk about that on my Broadcasters podcast, which you can find at broadcasterspodcast.com. You can find that there. I'll record that tomorrow night and have available for y'all Friday morning if you want to check that out. I recommend it. Now, the other thing, too, is with no production out there, there's nothing for her to go ahead and be working on right now in the first place. Nobody's really working production. There's a couple of countries overseas that are actually doing production right now. New Zealand just started. That's where Avatar's being shot and filmed. Poland just opened up. And I think a couple of Asian countries are going to be opening up, but that's about it. To do anything in the States right now, there's just not much. Everything's kind of just shot right now. So whatever's in the can right now, production, for her to do movies, even for The Rock or John Cena, it's kind of just, they're on hiatus right now. They're taking a bit of a break. They all got to take quarantine right now because there's just no work to do. And at this moment, when it comes to Becky's WWE career, I mean, she has been on the road for a long time. And she basically was very, I don't think she had any major injuries, right? For the most part, she worked pretty consistent and had a long career, very long career, what she was doing, which was really great. And for her, she could be one of the pinnacles of the women's revolution, which we talked about back in 2015, 2016. So you got that. And then after that, you just move along. But she had a great run. She was also SmackDown Women's Champion several times. She's done a lot. She has won quite a bit. And so for her, she had a long run. For what it's worth, women, I usually don't expect to have a very long run. Like, we don't see a lot of Natalias or Taminas running out there for a long period of time. That's one thing you don't see too much of. Because, it could be very traditional, very stereotypical for me to say, but, there are women that, when they want their career, they also want to be able to be mothers. They want to have children. Just a natural progression. So it's a biological thing. So with that said, that's great. It's good to go and see where she's here to do that, and good for her. But now things are left open. Now you got to ask yourself, what happens next to the main roster? Because when you look at that main roster, it's getting a little thin. The part-timers, it's one thing. But then you also got to ask yourself, who are the people that are supposed to be leading the charge on the main roster? Once the fact you think about, you don't have Roman Reigns right now for the duration until this quarantine, until the situation changes up. Basically, when things start getting back to some kind of normalcy where they can have crowds again, and WWE can either tape normal shows with a normal atmosphere without the fear, with some kind of a controlled environment where if people need to be tested and people can safely be out and about, then that's when I think Roman Reigns comes back. But then we already know the explanation for Roman Reigns is because his wife, just had a child. So he's been home with a newborn. So that's why he's been out. Basically maternity leave. Okay, family leave. So, but then again, he's not going to come back out right away. And with this case, there's no reason to bring him back right away out anyway. You could bring him back maybe for SummerSlam or Survivor Series. But then again, do you wait until the crowds can come back in some way, shape, or form and then do something with him? So they're going to probably hold on to him. In the meantime, the one major star you have right now, without a shadow of a doubt, is Drew McIntyre. That's it. And on the SmackDown side, Braun Strowman doesn't really cut it. He might now be the champion, but it's really not a good spot for him. And Bray Wyatt's been destroyed. So there's not much you can do with that right there. So they're struggling right now to find who could be main roster. I don't know who that's going to be. But the main event roster right now is in a tough spot. Nobody knows who that's going to be next. So I want to go ahead and pitch to Blake Ostreicher. By the way, he has a new podcast series he just launched called The One About Wrestling. If you get a chance, I'd go ahead and recommend checking that out for yourselves. I always have liked Blake's views. Over the last couple of years, I have pointed out a couple of his articles. I'll write back to him on Twitter here and there. So I do like where he comes from in some of his opinions. So he mentions the fact about Becky Lynch, and I want to bring this point across because, again, it's as if there's some cases where he is in the same lock set as I am when it comes to where do things go next, because it is the overall view. So here's what he says in an article he just wrote as I record this tonight. WWE must create new stars during Becky Lynch's hiatus. But this is also the main event roster in general. So it's no secret the star power department is hurting. This is according to Blake. And Vince McMahon blamed TV viewership on the lack of marquee stars. Well, they got to answer that. If that's what they're going to say in their earnings call to the shareholders, they have to come up with something better. So the company has been without John Cena, Undertaker, Brock Lesnar, and Roman Reigns. Those are the people that really were major focus at WrestleMania. But again, when you have the part-time talent, at this point, Roman Reigns is still he's kind of a bit of a part-time status as he came back. Given a couple different feuds he's been part of. But remember, most of it was TV feuds, and it wasn't that much in-ring action. And if I'm correct, he wasn't even doing that many house shows at that point. So he's been limited, in a limited role coming off of this. So now we got Lynch. So listen. And he says it like I say. She's going to be gone for roughly a year, and her future in WWE and pro wrestling as a whole is uncertain. I think she comes back, and she might be part-time for WrestleMania feuds. I can see that. I consider coming back for like a short run here and there, but not full time anymore. Not at all. So for those of you that might have been wondering what I was saying by that in my description of the show tonight, yeah, I'm saying I don't think she's coming back as a full-timer ever again. She doesn't have to. She's accomplished. She's an accomplished wrestler. She has made her mark. I mean, I think if you want to consider Hall of Fame status down the line, I'm going to say that Becky Lynch has done enough after her career's done. Once she does retire, which, I mean, I don't expect it's going to be right away. I think she might do another run or two, and then I might just hang up the boots altogether. And with that said, I think she's entitled to be inducted into the Hall of Fame after her career's done. I can see it. Compared to some of the other people that have been there, yeah, I absolutely think she can be in that roster. Not even a question there. She's part of that women's revolution. She won her titles. She moved the needle for women's wrestling. No doubt about it. And she's going to be the one star now that's going to have star power exceeding outside. Because remember, who else did you have on the main of the women's roster that really personifies and supersedes outside of the company? I mean, right now there isn't. Maybe Sasha Banks, but I mean, you know, there's her blood relation to Snoop Dogg, but there's not that much of that either. But I think if you really want to look at things, I think Sasha Banks, for her, she's had a little bit of her own personal issues to work out, and her relationships where it's been a little tough for her to get herself back on track. But now she's back on track again, and I think she's in a good spot. I mean, obviously, I would like to see her back. You know, I think if you want to do something, Charlotte or Sasha, I think Sasha Banks absolutely would be a person that could fill the role of that kind of star power on the women's side in place of Becky Lynch. I think this is where you bring her back over to that as well. Maybe you move her to the Raw roster, something like that. But at the moment, Asuka gets the role here. And, you know, I don't know what happens with Kairi Sane, what kind of things are going to go on with those two now. I think Kairi Sane now has to become a singles wrestler, and that tag team is not really a tag team much anymore because they're not going to go after the belts now. I mean, Asuka's the champ, as Asuka should be, because she's over right now, even with the gimmick now as a heel and no longer just speaking wildly with the makeup, you know, kind of going all Great Muta like. She's going to be there. So there you go. So now, this is what Blake says here. The announcement comes at a time when she was going to continue to make huge waves, but she was going to get herself in the mainstream. She cemented herself as one of the WWE's highest paid stars, male or female, and generating a lot of interest in Hollywood. But again, there's a report that she might have landed a major role in an upcoming Marvel movie. But again, we're not worrying about that so much because everything is on hold in production. So who knows what that movie's going to be and when that's supposed to be. So her acting career is likely on hold, just as her WWE career. So with that said, the current crop of stars now, you have main event spots that need to be filled. So with no Lynch, no Roman Reigns, two face of the company type superstars, that's an issue. And this is again where, you know, the issues that continue to go along with WWE about trying to make stars. They have to be able to make stars. Drew McIntyre is looking to get himself there. I think that can happen. I definitely feel like you have him right now that can be brought up to be happening. And I really feel there's other people that could be in that spot as well. I mean, Bobby Lashley was at level at one point. I don't see why he doesn't get back there as well. I really don't. I haven't really cared about the Lana feud too much at all. I just think that, I don't know, they're just not putting anything on him right now. And really, how can you get anybody over in this limbo, this kind of purgatory that we're having right now watching wrestling, which is just in these empty arenas and does not really get much of a difference? I mean, I don't know what you're going to do with that and what you're going to do to really build out. I think one of the things that we've seen throughout this whole quarantine period, this whole pandemic period, is that more than anything, the WWE has really done a good job of learning about what other wrestling companies have been doing for a while. The Lucha Underground, Impact Wrestling, final deletion style cinematic wrestling matches. I think they're starting to see the light with that. And that's a good thing. Of course, it's more prep time, storyboard, the way they got to build it out, but it's working. I mean, even the Money in the Bank ladder match this weekend, even though it was hokey, I thought that the ending of the whole night was actually not bad at all. I actually enjoyed that part. I didn't really care so much about the in-between stuff. The few things in there, I mean, I will admit, AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan confronting Vince McMahon in his office, I liked some of that. But other than that, it really was, I could have just used everything in the ring upstairs instead of the whole ride up the floor. Because I really didn't care what was going on downstairs and the other floors. It wasn't really much to it. But I think there's something to be said about these cinematic matches because you could really do something with. I don't know where you're going to go with it, but I think there's something good about that. Now, WWE finds itself in an awfully similar situation that can be looked at as a difficult place to be in right now. Because Blake references the Ruthless Aggression era and the stars we've talked about that were around. Cena, Lesnar, Randy Orton, I include Batista in that spot, that came out of that whole run. You could have, now Orton and Edge are back, so in those two, you could definitely raise that up as a secondary main event feud. You're going to have that going forward, going into Backlash, maybe continue to go on the SummerSlam, whatever it could be. So that's good. Now, one of the other things that the company has done, which, again, it's in response to what's going on now. It's basically the wild card rule once again. It's going to be tough for them to keep the split going, but they're going to have to keep it the way they have it set up with the broadcasters and their contracts. That's going to be tough for them. So they're going to have no choice but to see what they have. He's talking about Drew McIntyre, Aleister Black, Liv Morgan, and a lot of up-and-comers who should be, coming up sooner rather than later. So he talks about who will take the opportunity and seize it on the male or female sides. Well, I mean, for me, it's a tough situation because there are stars that could have been up there that could have done something. I mean, look, you've had some people that have held belts. When you look at the main roster now and who you have at the moment, the depth chart, if you will. So Drew McIntyre now is a title holder. You have Jinder Mahal that has been a title holder. Bobby Lashley has been a title holder. Dolph Ziggler has been a title holder. I mean, there's been some things where we see, Baron Corbin or King Corbin being brought up into some some profile feuds, but he has not been near the title. I mean, he has had the Money in the Bank briefcase. At the moment now we have Otis holding on to the briefcase. So I guess Otis would have to be going after, I don't know what he goes after. I mean, does he go after the SmackDown? I mean, who's he going to go after for the title? Because at the moment, there's nobody for him to take on. I don't see him taking on Braun Strowman. You got to wait for a heel to have that belt. So for Otis to have it, it's an interesting situation. I think what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to go ahead and put in a spot where with Otis, I think you're just going to have to put him into the spot where you have to wait for a heel champion to come into play. So my guess would be that Braun Strowman doesn't have that belt for a long time. But does it end up being Bray Wyatt after all? Like, will they try to restart that feud after Bray Wyatt was handily... I mean, they're going to have to make Bray Wyatt be handily beaten down, which is the whole idea. Bray Wyatt losing to Braun Strowman is one thing. But then when you turn things around, the Fiend has to come back out, and that's the one that beats Braun Strowman. I'm guessing that's what they're going to have to do Friday night and set that up. So you're going to put Otis against the Fiend? Or is there somebody else you put in? And then the other thing they have right now that's also a situation, do we even have a U.S. champion right now? Well, it's Andrade, isn't it? But he hasn't defended that title in a while. It's like the Dean Ambrose run. And as for the IC title, we now have a vacancy. Sami Zayn has vacated the Intercontinental title, or they have made him drop the Intercontinental title. So now they have to crown a new champion. So I guess an IC title tournament comes into play. So you have that can take up some time, right? IC title tournament, Randy Orton Edge, Drew McIntyre, Seth Rollins, I guess, continues, and Braun Strowman, Bray Wyatt continues. And then on the women's side, well, Asuka is champion. So the Money in the Bank briefcase has been resolved there already. No cash in. And Bayley remains champion. And then the whole dynamic with her and Sasha Banks. So what do we have after that? I don't know. It's not an easy situation. So I don't know what you do here to kind of rectify everything now. That's a tough spot. So with all that, on the women's side, I still believe like Lacey Evans has a spot to be put in here. I think Liv Morgan definitely has a spot to go and be brought into somewhere in the case. Charlotte is at NXT, so she's, dealing with that. But there's not much else. Because the women's division, I feel like on both sides, having Tamina go up against Becky, that was just rough. Or Tamina going up against Bayley, excuse me. Get those, B and a Y, the first name, what can I tell you? So with that said, there's not much there. I don't know what you do. But the one thing that the company has decided to do to kind of help keep things interesting is the brand movement. So Money in the Bank is in the rearview mirror. Now we have the institution of the brand invitation. So here's what we got. Adam Silverstein reports a couple days ago, and this is reported by John Pollock at postwrestling.com. King Corbin will be appearing next Monday night as part of a brand invitation. Now, this will be a non-title match, it looks like. The Iconics, who have been on SmackDown, made a return to TV and appeared on the final hour of Raw. And that Charlotte Flair, who's been on Raw and NXT, will appear on SmackDown on Friday. So the crossover's back. The wild card rule, in essence, is back in effect. The wild card rule was eliminated in October. And it was plaguing the booking strategy and programming. And so now they're in a tough spot. And the thing is that since the new TV deals began, you had the draft, which really went badly. And the rosters were split once again. And WWE did keep the rosters split. But now they need to go and do what they need to do to kind of keep things interesting. So they're going back to the split up and the wild card rule, which is basically just trying to mold the roster once again. But brand invitations now. And so that's what they got to do. So the fact that Baron Corbin now comes over to go ahead and take on Drew McIntyre, is it just a one-off? Or do we start seeing a feud between them? And do they start crossing over each other? Because I can see where they could make Drew McIntyre work on both brands. If they have to do that. Drew McIntyre, I feel like he has momentum. And, maybe Seth Rollins will probably be taking time off as well to go along with Becky Lynch as, they're going to be together, on maternity leave. So Seth Rollins, maybe the Monday Night Messiah thing goes to the wayside. And we don't see him for a while. And this is the issue where you have the interpersonal dating and relationships within the company, which was the barrier that the company created themselves by basically allowing everybody like an Olympic Village to go ahead and start sleeping with each other or hooking up. So we see that right now, and it's all worked this way. Aleister Black and Zelina Vega, Charlotte with Andrade. I think it's all working out itself, right? It's what it is. Because really, what spots do you have? Because also, this is a thing where Triple H originally, some of the things he had brought back, like you were hoping that some of the stars from NXT that would help kind of build things up. Well, you have nothing in the cupboard right now. Keep this in mind as well. So they're going brand to brand invitations now, wild card rule, basically, because there's nothing else they have. There are other backup plans. They're not going to get part-timers back for anything anytime soon. Okay? And the part-timers you can get back, you're not going to get Undertaker back again right away. You're not going to get John Cena back right away. You're not going to get, Batista. I mean, like, you think about it. The Ronda Rousey, these are people not coming back right now. Brock Lesnar getting him back. Like, think about what you're going with right now. There's not a lot of people you have to go after to bring back over to kind of build things back up. You don't have that. And then again, pulling the trigger on somebody from the roster to bring them up, you don't have that either. I mean, there's nobody right now that you could bring up to the main roster. Now, don't tell me Keith Lee. And, don't tell me Adam Cole. And don't tell me Undisputed Era. I don't believe it. No. There is nobody right now you could take from the NXT roster and bring them back up and bring them up. And the moment, remember, you have a lot of people that have made it up to the main roster that we're still trying to work out. The Viking Raiders and Street Profits. We're trying to get those people to work each other out. The storyline with the basketball stuff really didn't get over for me at all. And for those two to work with each other, right? And then you got some tired up stars in like Mr. Morrison and New Day. Like, they're not tired out, but like we've seen them for a long time. They're not new. Usos are hurt. One of them is hurt, so we can't have the other. And, what else you got? You got a lot of stars like Lucha House Party and Humberto Carrillo and Andrade and Austin Theory and, Angel Garza. Okay, but most of those stars are mid-carders. But who do you have that goes to the main roster? I mean, the main card. I think Daniel Bryan would definitely need to be brought up to the main event again. You got to elevate him again. AJ Styles has to be brought up to the main event again. I think one thing you could do is if Seth Rollins is out, and yeah, it's unfortunate that AJ Styles had to come back when he did, but I think Drew and AJ need to have a feud together. I think that's where you go next. Because I don't know what you do now with Baron Corbin at this point, but I really do believe that you need to go and get AJ Styles elevated back up again as well. I mean, he's reliable. He's there. And it's like, everything's said and done, I don't think he's lost any spunk or any kind of luster from him losing to Undertaker like he did, especially the way he did in the fashion. It doesn't hurt him. I mean, I think having him out at the moment you just got to work things out with that. And then, think about it. There was nobody in that purge when they had to lay off a bunch of people a few weeks ago. I don't think there was anybody there that you could be using right now to come back and do something with. No. So the thing is, they got to work with what they have. I do believe that when you see some of the stars they have right now, they're going to have to pull the trigger on some stars that they have currently on their roster. They're going to have to work with what they have that they're working with currently. They're trying to build up. I mean, look, Ricochet, Cedric Alexander's kind of on the wayside. There's nothing you can do with them right now. You're not going to get them heated right back up. I think we're AJ Styles, Bobby Lashley. You don't even have Kevin Owens right now to come back. Sami Zayn, or whatever happened to him. Shinsuke Nakamura you got, but again, they've all been made mid-carders. I think the people you can get to the main event again is AJ. You can get him back to the main event again. I think you could easily do that. And then I think Baron Corbin could also, but people don't want him up there. He's hated. You got to find something to make this guy get over that's going to be like, so it's going to be a hate over the top that he's going to be allowed to get over. And he does get heat, man, but it's the way they position him. It's so bad. The King thing sucks. It really does. Sheamus, you got have back once again. You could get him built back up. Jeff Hardy's back. They are trying to build the feud with those two guys. And then what else do you have? Like, you got a lot of veteran stars. You can start trying to heat up once again, get them somewhere. You're going to just have to play off the veterans and get them pushed up. Find a way. Because there's nobody of the younger talent that you can really tap into right now. And that's going to take some time. But then again, this is where you get experimental. The company has to just go ahead and try anything. Throw it on the wall and stick. This time, some of the corporate thoughts and processes need to be thrown out the window. This is where they got to be creative. They have to listen. They have to feel like they're on their heels right now once again. I'm telling you, look, All Elite Wrestling, for what it's worth, I think they've been pulling off some good things once again. They are getting a little bit of presence once again on their show. Okay? You know, they've had some issues initially trying to get things back up. I think they're going to get a bump this week in Dynamite. I think Dynamite gets a bump this week. They did get a bump up where they've been around the 730,000 mark a couple of times. They hit that 3 weeks ago, and they hit that mark last week after the Inner Circle match where Les Sex Gods took on Hardy and Omega. They're building that back up, and they've actually built up 4 matches for the Double or Nothing card coming up next week, next Saturday. So you got that they're building up, and that was actually pretty good. And then they build up some good stuff for Double or Nothing that got things interesting. You know, they did some good stuff in storyline as well. Matt Hardy, Chris Jericho's getting heated up pretty well. Brody Lee and John Moxley's getting heated up very well. The Elite and the Inner Circle are going to continue to go ahead and battle each other. They're going to have a Stadium Stampede match. So I'm guessing that's got to be cinematic. They're going to probably have to do something like how they did the Young Bucks match on Being the Elite. They're going to probably have to tape that match. I don't see them doing it live. It's going to be too much work to go ahead and do that whole arena, do that whole work TIAA Bank Field, the stadium for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and be able to make that happen. Now, one thing I noticed that the Dynamite show had that really helped out is not only did you have the normal stars down at ringside, you know, the faces and heels on each side, you saw some crowd there a little bit, and they were responding. Just that reaction was enough to see where Jake Roberts was getting the boos. Same thing for Matt Hardy, Chris Jericho. You were getting reactions. And that reaction, even though it was small and it wasn't a real significant thing, it was enough to get people to notice, oh, we're getting reactions again. And AEW is the first one to get that. They're the ones that are trying to take advantage the most. Meanwhile, the corporate structure and the safety issues, yes, that WWE is going to be doing is one thing. And this is where the dynamic comes in where, you know, for WWE and this corporate entity, the fact they have to answer to shareholders and their team and their stars and the money they've invested, you know, when you're the establishment, you're going to worry about liability and insurance. And that's exactly what I'm sure Vince McMahon's been working on and dealing with, because he doesn't want to be paying out anymore. He's already had to make the significant changes in terms of furloughs and layoffs and staff and this and that. Taking a full hit of the XFL. So, I mean, financially, he's taking a hit. So he's got to find something else he can do. And as for AEW, well, at this point, they're going to take some risks, and they are. I mean, you can say, oh, social distancing, they're not doing that so much. They're letting people into the arenas now. It's because of what's being allowed by the governor of Florida. And the governor of Florida is encouraging more sports to happen in Florida while things are happening. And at the moment, the testing is actually showing that things can do that such. I mean, people are going to be kind of abusing the privilege. You already see that as well. And this is where you come down to the political line of, okay, do you open back up or do you continue to be scared with doom and gloom and that you need to go ahead and wait for a vaccine to come into play where everything economically falls apart? But I'm going to be of the opinion that we need the economy to turn back on. And it's starting to turn back on now. I can see it across the board, which is good. So that's fine. But for me, it's like, AEW is trying to take advantage of the situation. And when WWE doesn't want to go ahead and try to pull the trigger on trying to, take any risks, everything for them is calculated. And I get that part. But they're going to have to do something going forward to kind of help things out. I mean, they got to, for the sake of their brand, they're going to have, I think the broadcast partners are going to probably put some pressure on them. They're in the same vein as AEW. And if AEW's ratings go up this week, which I feel like they're going to, like they did significantly better than NXT last week, I think they're going to do the same thing again. I don't know if they get to 800,000, but I think they might be able to retain 730,000. I personally think that AEW's audience goes up a little bit this week. I think they're getting momentum right now. I mean, the damn Sammy Guevara getting hit by a golf cart thing went over. That got over big. I mean, the best thing, the best one, whoever is at TNT doing their stuff, the memes were fantastic. The meme of Grand Theft Auto was hilarious. The GTA thing is seeing Sammy Guevara and it's like, ended. It was hilarious. And they continue to do things where in the ring, you can see certain things that are very meme friendly, that are getting viral. Like Jericho busting down Vanguard 1 with Floyd the Bat. That stuff's going to get over. Okay, we're going to see that all over the place. And that's what we got. Now, AEW has its shortcomings. Yes, the Fatal 4-Way, you got 4 stars in there that 4 female wrestlers I really, really like a lot. A lot. Chris Statlander, Hikaru Shida, Britt Baker. I mean, yeah, man, I like them a lot. But you could tell that match, they struggled. And Penelope Ford, please don't forget about her. God forbid I forget Penelope Ford. You got 4 of the stars that they've been really pushing a lot for. And, might not have been the best match in the world, but then again, their women's wrestling is not the best right now. They struggle a little bit. I mean, they did keep it together, but you could see it was a little bit of a botch fest, a little bit there. We could see it. And so that's where we are with things. So it's going to be a tough spot. And on top of that, we're seeing things keeping on being built up because of the fact that we want to continue to see a build up to Double or Nothing because they need to get matches being put together and ready to go. So they're working on that right now, which is fine. I like them doing that and trying to do what they can to make that happen. So first off, Orange Cassidy will take on Phoenix because Phoenix attacked Cassidy during the Best Friends Jurassic Express match. So the match will be set up. And both of them will be competing in the Casino Ladder match at AEW's Double or Nothing. And MJF is going to take on Marco Stunt. And then John Moxley will take on the number 10 of the Dark Order next week. And Moxley and Brody Lee will be facing each other for the world title at Double or Nothing. Matt Hardy will take on Sammy Guevara. That'll be a good match. That'll be a good setup. Because we've already seen Hardy and Omega working with each other. They went ahead and took on Proud and Powerful tonight. And all those people are going to be part of the Stadium Stampede match. And the next week we will be seeing a face-to-face between Jake the Snake Roberts and Arn Anderson before their clients clash in the finals of the AEW TNT title tournament. And for all you old schoolers, seeing a promo cutting war between between Jake the Snake Roberts and Arn and the enforcer Arn Anderson, you're talking about 2 of the best promo cutters of the 80s. I'm eating it all up. Love it. That's great stuff. So you got that. Now, also, NXT TakeOver is going to be doing an In Your House coming up on June 7th. We'll have that coming up down the lines. But, again, where we are, there's some momentum with AEW right now. But it's not a large build, but there's some. And I think what they're setting up now for their matches coming up are pretty good. At this moment, here's what you got for matches so far. 4 matches announced tonight, but now they got a full card ready to go for May 23rd. Stadium Stampede, Inner Circle. It'll be all 5 members: Jericho, Guevara, Hager, Santana, Ortiz against the Elite. But the Elite will be Omega, Young Bucks, Hangman Page, and Matt Hardy accompanying the Elite. TNT Championship to get the first inaugural champion. It's Cody versus Lance Archer. Great build to that feud. And I think Jake the Snake Roberts has helped a lot in that. And I think the whole thing that they did with Cody today with the truck and running into the match, and the deal they did with Brandy Rhodes taking her out, that story's been told very well. I enjoy it. Hikaru Shida, who's number 1 contender for the women's title, will take on Nyla Rose. It's a no DQ match. So, as we said, MJF's going to take on Marco Stunt, and that's going to be in anticipation where MJF's going to take on Jungle Boy at Double or Nothing. Casino Ladder match at the moment, we have Darby Allin, Colt Cabana, Orange Cassidy, and Rey Fenix. And there's another person yet to be named. Britt Baker will take on Chris Statlander in a match. Actually, I enjoyed that where Britt Baker got picked up by Statlander and started doing the beep boop, like the whole heel thing. She's such a good heel. She's got to work her. She's still got to kind of, tweak her moveset, which is not bad. But you can just tell it's not perfect. It's going to take a little bit of time. But her gimmick is so over that for me, I can let a little bit of the slip-up slide. Okay? In the buy-in, the pre-show, there will be a number 1 contenders match for the AEW Tag Team title. Private Party will take on Best Friends. That's a damn good match for a pre-show. Buy-in. There you go. Good stuff. So that's a good pay-per-view right there. Love it. And of course, we'll do a post-show right here on May 23rd. Following that, we'll get that all for you. And if you didn't catch the post-show, I did a post-show for Money in the Bank. I did that for all of you on the website, so go ahead and look for that if you haven't had a chance to hear that yet. It took about 20 minutes to talk about the pay-per-view itself. Wasn't much more I was going to talk about it. And then I took some comments I took from the Tom Segura thing that went going on late last week, which that's why I went ahead and put it in the Money in the Bank episode, and I recorded on it on Thursday as it was happening, because to bring it up now would have been late. And of course, news changes so quickly. That's where we are now. So that's what we got. And I forgot to mention the NXT tonight, which I didn't get a chance to watch, but I'll try to catch up later. We now have new tag team champions. And the champions are now Imperium, beating Matt Riddle and Timothy Thatcher. So Fabian Eichner and Marcel Barthel are now the new champs on the tag team side. And then we had Cruiserweight title tournament and Tony Nese being defeated by Jake Atlas. Cameron Grimes over Finn Balor. Okay. And another title tournament match. Isaiah Scott is beaten by Jack Gallagher. Isaiah Swerve Scott. Dude, Killshot. Was it a good idea to go to NXT? Because, the former MLW champion, former Lucha Underground contender, he's not doing much lately. He's just kind of there. So it's really weird where they're kind of using him. They're not really using him to, the potential personally. But oh well. And I will admit, I do like the Robert Stone brand. I like some of that going on. I see Aaliyah's going to be brought on probably to join that group with Chelsea Green. That looks kind of interesting. And so there you go. I mean, it's like, it is what it is. It was probably a pretty decent show. But like I said, when you look at the results, it looked like, okay. So that said, we're now in a spot where, and by the way, that's an interim cruiserweight title tournament. Until Jordan Devlin can come back overseas and, retain the spot. However, they're going to do that at some point down the line. I'm going to leave it there. Got my hour in, and I think I got everything I wanted to get in. In terms of Impact Wrestling, I did read that Sami Callihan dropped the belt. I'm going to bring that up real quick. Oh, yeah, I forgot to make mention. Mike Tyson will present the TNT title going on for what's going to happen. Yeah, I forgot to make mention of that. Oh, excuse me. Sami Callihan moved into the number one contenders tournament. He actually, that's what was going on. So I didn't realize that was all going on, but let's go and bring that up real quick for everybody to go and know what's going on there. So at the moment, you're going to have right now Trey Miguel, who beat Rohit Raju in a quarterfinal match. Sami Callihan takes on Michael Elgin. Hernandez beat Man Fulton to go ahead and advance. And Rhino and Shamrock are in the other bracket, and they'll have a match upcoming. And then they're really doing things right now where Tessa Blanchard is not able to go ahead and be a part of the tapings where she can defend or be presented as world champion. So that's why they have Moose right now as a TNA champion, kind of running along with that gimmick for a while. So that's what they're going to do with that right there. I hope that clears everything up. Okay, we're going to wrap things up for tonight. Thanks for listening into the show, finding it as you always do. Again, I hope you're going to consider to help out through my link, kingofamazon.com. Buy your stuff on Amazon from there. Help me out in that respect. I really would appreciate it. And until next week, come back for another Wrestling World podcast. We'll do a full preview and predictions for Double or Nothing coming up next week, because wrestling needs us.
Thank you for listening to the Wrestling is Real podcast, brought to you by kingofamazon.com. For more information on how to subscribe to the show, how to share the Wrestling is Real podcast to listeners like you, and check out the latest wrestling headlines, go to wrestlingisreal.com. That's wrestlingisreal.com.